how does the wall keep us free? My children, how does the wall keep us free?
Well, that very compelling song is from the Broadway musical Hadestown, nominated for 14 Tony Awards, and that voice, the unmistakable voice of Broadway's favorite villain, Patrick Page, who is nominated, I believe, your first time of all the years you've been on Broadway. This is your first Tony Award nomination.
Thank you. It is, although I do have to take exception with the idea that I'm Broadway's favorite villain.
Oh, right, that's true.
I think you're Broadway's favorite villain.
You may be right about that. Do you remember when you had that great show at 54 Below?
Thank you.
Where you played an array of Broadway villains.
That's right.
But you kind of used me as an accomplice.
If you're in the house, you're going to be used.
That's it, exactly. Well, congratulations on the success of Hadestown. Patrick is playing King Hades, the namesake of the show. You knew when you went in for this role you were going to get it, right? I mean, once the voice comes out, you have the voice of King Hades.
I thought they might be looking for me when I heard the music. I thought, well, maybe this is a role that I should play.
Now, this is a very interesting show because it has a complex, beautiful score that we don't usually associate with Broadway musicals. How would you describe the score for people who are just hearing it for the first time?
Well, it's, Anais Mitchell is a songwriter, and I guess how you would categorize her is in the folk category.
Yeah.
Although her music is really complex and hard to categorize. In Hadestown, there's a lot of jazz influence, kind of New Orleans blues influence, but there's also rock and pop. When you get to a song like Wait For Me, how do you categorize that? How do you categorize some of the stuff that Reeve Carney sings in the show? So it's very modern, very hip, and it's the kind of music I'd love to hear more of on Broadway.
Exactly. I was going to say it's an exciting time on Broadway because we are having composers and lyricists such as Anais who are writing, not the kind of 42nd Street, and I love the old brassy Broadway sound, but it's about time, I think, Broadway music becomes more contemporary, more in the popular mode.
I agree with you, and I think there's room for everything.
Right,
you know. There's no one Broadway sound. But I do think, one of the things about musicals that's happened over the last, at least couple of decades is the idea of people breaking into song is in itself somewhat absurd, right?
Yeah, artificial kind of.
It's artificial, and it can seem absurd. And so a lot of musicals have taken now the point of view that they kind of send up the form as they perform it.
Right.
You're in Town, Avenue Q, Spamalot. They're
like the meta musicals that are commenting on the form of the musical.
Commenting on the form. And even some more serious musicals like The Prom are sending up the idea of like these crazy musical theater actors coming in and taking over a little Indiana town. And I think it's very difficult nowadays to write a genuine, serious musical from the heart, because the form itself is it's not passé in any way, but I think in order to make it current, you have to think in new ways, as Lin-Manuel did with Hamilton, and as I think Anais has done.
Is doing with Hadestown.
Yeah,
absolutely. So your first time for a Tony nomination. Now, I'm always amused to talk to actors who are going through the rigmarole of it all. Now, so you've had to attend how many lunches for how many hours and shake how many hands?
Yes, they didn't tell me when they gave me the nomination that it's a full-time job.
It's a campaign.
It's a campaign, a full-time job, in addition to the 8 shows you're doing a week.
Exactly.
So, for example, on the day of the Tonys, we have a 6:30 a.m. call at the Walter Kerr Theater to get dressed, to go and rehearse the full dress rehearsal of the Tonys all morning. Then we come back to our theater, do our matinee. Then we go do the Tonys, and then we do the 3 parties after the Tonys.
Where the drinking doesn't start until after the awards are given out?
That's what they tell me.
I've got a hint for you. It's better to a little glass of champagne just before the show starts. So tell me a little bit about your background. Now, as I introduced you as someone who plays a lot of villains, and I think it's because of the voice, of course, but the poise. You've got that kind of wonderful old, like Jack Cassidy sort of villainous elegance. I always thought
you. He was one of my favorites when I was
He's a terrific actor.
Yeah.
Love Jack Cassidy. Surely you didn't set out to be the bad guy in a lot of stuff when you were a young actor?
Well, what's funny is I did.
Really?
I always wanted to play that part when I was a kid, and I kind of had to grow into it. And I tell this story in the show you were talking about, my one-man cabaret, about when I was a little boy, and my father was directing a musical called Hey George, and in it there was a villain called Malavenom, and I wanted to play him so badly. And I rehearsed the song that he had to sing in the show, and I didn't get the part from my own father.
Really?
Who then told me that I was the best actor, but that the other boy was a better singer, and so he got the role. And so I stopped singing for the next 30 years.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't do musicals until I came to New York, and I was a reader for Jay Binder, who was
The casting director.
major casting director, and Jay was casting the national tour of Angels in America, and I had come in to audition for it. I didn't get the role, but at the end of the day, he said, tomorrow I just lost my reader for the first national tour of Beauty and the Beast. And if anyone doesn't know what a reader is, the reader is the person who reads the scene opposite whoever's coming in.
With the actor
audition.
who they're auditioning. You're not auditioning.
Correct. And so I came in to be the reader for a musical, and I had never been in a musical audition before, and I was astonished at the level of how these people came in completely ready for an opening night performance. This was 25 years ago, and in those days, really when you went into audition for something, you came in and you really did sort of show a stage of your work. You didn't show a completed performance. Nowadays, you really have to go in with a complete performance.
Yeah.
But in those days, you didn't. So I was astonished in musical theater that they came in just completely fully prepared with the songs. But anyway, I was reading the back and forth scene with Cogsworth and Lumiere, and Jay said, you could play this part. And I fought tooth and nail, but eventually they got me into the show, and I did it for 5 years.
Wow.
And that's where I met my wife, Paige Davis.
Of course, yeah. How was the singing voice after not having sung all those years? Or did you keep it up? Did you practice?
Oh, no, I couldn't sing at all.
Really?
And I almost lost. I mean, I could a little bit, but I could carry a tune, and I think I had certain musical sensibility, but I didn't know how to sing. But Lumiere was kind of a, Maurice Chevalier imitation.
Be our guest, be our guest.
And but I couldn't hit the note at the end of the number, and they had me try half a dozen times to hit it, and I couldn't hit it. And eventually they just thought, oh, well, I'll give it to him. There are a lot of other people singing at that point.
That's good. So I would certainly be remiss if we didn't reminisce about how we met on Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, one of the legendary Broadway shows. In
Well,
which
you were such a champion of that show.
The Green Goblin. It's true. But I must say, despite all of the attacks I launched on the show in my column in the Post, you always took it good-naturedly. I mean, you never took what I was doing really seriously.
No. Well, I've always thought that the role that you have played is to make Broadway a kind of akin to a sport, like baseball or football or something, and and that makes it fun.
Winners and losers and competition.
Yes, although you never champion a show I'm in. You champion me personally, but
I've
never
always
a show
championed
I'm in.
Really? What haven't I?
Well, I don't recall you. How you did with my one-man show. That was,
I love that. Was a great
that was
show.
wonderful. But like Hadestown, you've been pushing The Prom. You've been pushing Ain't Too Proud. You never mentioned Hadestown.
Well, that's true, although I do think you're going to win.
Well, thank you.
You don't need my help. I'm going for the underdog. You are not. Hadestown is not exactly the underdog.
Well, Spider-Man was an underdog.
Well, I don't know.
Well, only after you got through with it.
That's right. At $100 million, it's not much of an underdog. So, but you had all the kinds of problems in Spider-Man, people getting hurt. I have to ask you, I thought at the end of the day, even though I was tough on the director, Julie Taymor, I did feel that she got kind of a bad deal by being pushed out of that show. And I just wondered how you guys felt with her being your leader for so long.
Oh, it was
when
very
she
hard.
was swiped aside.
I think that was one of the hardest things about that. It was very, very hard. Julie is a friend of mine, but she's also a genius.
Brilliantly talented.
And all through that process, if you get to work for a genius, you just kind of let them lead. Because what I said to her many times when I thought there were maybe story decisions or things that I didn't understand, I wouldn't have understood what she was doing with Lion King in the creative process of that either. When she said, "I'm going to put the masks on top of people's heads,
Yeah.
and you're going to see the actor on stilts as the giraffe," and I would have thought this
Bonkers.
yeah, this is bonkers. And of course, it's brilliant. So when you're with someone like that, you let them lead.
Right.
And of course, I was very sad when she left. But I also, then it's my job as an actor to now follow my new director.
Mhm.
And I thought that the new people did their work very well also. So,
Mm.
you know.
It's interesting what you say about Julie, to your point that you would have thought, how do you do with the masks on the head? Because I interviewed Michael Eisner, who was the head of Disney then, for a book I'm working on. And he said the one thing he couldn't understand was how are the head puppets going to work on the actors when they were in rehearsal. And he said to Julie, he said, the audience is not going to know what to look at. Do they look at the actor's face or do they look at the puppet on the head?
Yeah.
And Julie said, they're not going to be confused. He said, no, they're going to be confused. She said, the lighting's not here. Everything's not done. Believe me, when we're in the theater, they're going to have no trouble going back and forth like that.
Right.
And Eisner said, this is going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
And he said she was right. Sure enough, first performance out in Minneapolis, the audience, they weren't bothered at all by where to look.
Yeah.
They just looked where it was exciting.
And I believe Disney Theatrical actually made, and perhaps it was Michael Eisner at the time, made Julie do a whole presentation both ways, one with the masks as she designed them, and another in sort of
Furry costumes.
Yeah,
Their fallback was basically a Disneyland version of The Lion King.
yeah, exactly.
But that's why she's a genius.
Yeah.
So are you. Congratulations on your Tony Award nomination. I
Thank
will be
you.
predicting a win for you. So I am your champion.
Oh, well, that's good.
Hadestown is a terrific play at the terrific musical at the Walter Kerr. 14 Tony Award nominations. Great cast, including your old pal Reeve Carney, who played Spider-Man in
Reeve
Peter
Carney,
Parker.
and when you're talking about the Tony nominations, I have to say there have been 11 ties in Tony history.
Really?
I've learned this because I'm hoping for the 12th tie.
Oh, because
my dear friend Andre DeShields
Andre's
is
great.
also in my category.
Yeah, no, well, well, I don't know which way I would go with the two of you.
Well, that's why we're going to have a tie.
There should be a tie. And I've known Andre forever. Now he is a great guy.
He is astonishing.
Have you ever it's fascinating to see him in Hadestown. I've seen him in many shows. The way he moves. I mean,
Yeah.
he just can move a little finger and he commands the attention of the entire audience.
Yeah, he's a master.
Absolutely. All right, Patrick Page, thanks for being my guest.
Thank you very much.
That does it for Inside Broadway. Christine was away this week, but she'll be here next week. So please follow us. If you are listening on the iHeartRadio app or on your computer, just hit follow, so you'll always know when we put up a new episode. We post a new episode every Friday, so don't miss out. We'll see you next time on Inside Broadway.